Are you a pitcher that's coming back from an arm injury and aren't sure about how the best way to build up your throwing to get back to pitching at your pre-injury level? I'm going to go over today how we design rehab throwing programs for pitchers. So, how do I know this? I'm Dr. Jeff Lewis. I'm the owner and physical therapist of Lewis Physical Therapy and Sports Rehab in Point Pleasant, New Jersey. And I have helped countless baseball players, primarily pitchers, get back to throwing pain-free, get stronger, and get back to their pre-injury level of performance. So, yeah, what I want to go over today is how we develop pitcher rehab throwing programs. And there's a couple things I want to just lay out more than anything. Is one is throwing programs are written in pencil, not pen. I can't tell you how many times I've written out a 2 to 3 month throwing program one day, and by the next day, the entire thing is changed. All right. So you never want to just say, all right, this is the throwing program. This is what it's going to be for the next, the next 2 months or whatnot without any wiggle room in there. That's not the case. The second part of it is I always encourage guys as they're going through a throwing program, make sure you have a qualified pitching coach that you are working with. Again, as a physical therapist, I am more aware of the qualities such as strength, endurance, stability that guys need to be able to get into certain positions in their throwing mechanics. But in specific, like when we're getting down the real details of throwing mechanics, I always encourage guys to work with a qualified pitching coach. The second or the third thing that I'm going to go over here is that what we're going to go over today is a general framework for pitchers coming back to really come back to pitching after an arm injury. Not every pitcher is going to go through this entire step-by-step progression. There might be certain things that we either spend more time in or less time in. If it's a guy that's come back from Tommy John surgery, they're probably going to go through every single one of these steps here versus if it's a guy that's coming back after a 3-week shoulder elbow issue, it's not going to be as detailed as this. We're going to be a little bit more not aggressive, but a little bit faster in our return to performance. So when it comes to these rehab throwing programs, so in general, guys will almost always start their throwing program at about 30 to 45 feet right up here. I will say 30 feet, I really just use more so for younger, like youth throwers versus anyone else. If it's a pretty seasoned, trained high school pitcher or really anything above that, I'm going to start at 45 feet. 30 feet is just probably going to feel too close for them, to be honest with you. It's almost going to just feel like they can't throw properly because it's so close. So 45 feet is usually the starting point for most guys in high school, collegiate, and professional level. After that, we're going to go to 60 feet. Then from there, 75 feet, 90 feet, 105 feet, and 120 feet. I like to, for the most part, build guys up to 120 feet more than anything, just because there's some research that's out there that says, hey, the stress or mechanics on the arm at 120 feet is similar to some lower intensity slope work or bullpen work. So we really just want to make sure guys can comfortably throw up to 120. Now, there's a lot of other details that go into this in terms of throwing volume, throwing intensity, and we're not going to cover that for the sake of today's video. Today is more just a matter of the steps that we take through there. So, the expectation too is we're eventually building up from throwing every other day to then throwing on back-to-back days and so on and so forth. But again, that differs from each person. It's just another factor to take into consideration. So we eventually get guys up to 120 feet. Once we have them throw out to 120 feet, then we have guys come back in for what I call flat ground. So if they're not pulling down from 120 backing in, they throw out to 120, they walk it back into 60 feet, and now they're going through their pitching mechanics. So this is really the first time that they're focusing on throwing hard on a line more than anything. So really for these points here, this really shouldn't be hard on a line at any point during this. It should be enough of intensity where it has a little bit of an arc to it, but you shouldn't be lobbing it either. So it's a matter of finding that middle ground for guys more often than not. I really don't encourage getting a radar gun on most guys here because I think there's definitely some benefit there in the sense of, hey, like progressing guys based on their velo, like based on velo intensity or whatnot. But I've seen all too often where guys get very fixated on the number more than anything. And unfortunately, at the time, then that usually ends up sacrificing their mechanics. So it's a very delicate balance. You need to know the pitcher and the player that you're dealing with. It's very person dependent. In general, I usually don't break out the radar gun during this phase, just from what I found in my experience in terms of what works best and what doesn't work best. But again, that's part of work with a qualified pitching coach is being able to tell, hey, what are we like intensity wise? What is it looking like more than often than not? So we come in here. they're throwing flat grounds at 60 feet. This is going to be just fastballs only. They're maybe going to throw 10 to 15 in a session, probably nothing more than that. So we get the flat grounds here. After we have someone throw flat grounds successfully, another caveat I'll mention here, but we're not going to go too much in depth. There's a lot of talk these days on, hey, do we just have guys, instead of having guys throwing a flat ground, which is potentially going to be causing more stress on the arm because they don't have the really throwing on flat ground, what if we just get them on the slope of a mound and whatnot? And because they're going to be able to then use that slope to their advantage for better body arm positioning. I think there's definitely some thought behind that. But again, you need to make sure that you know your player. Most guys, when you put them, here versus here, when you put them on the mound, their intensity is going to go up just because that's who they are. That's who they are. That's how they are programmed. They get on the mound for the most part, and they're just used to just pitching full effort, right? So again, you want to just be mindful of that. I just, as a general rule of thumb, I see flat grounds work just fine. It's one of those things where it's like the research is out there that's maybe telling us otherwise, but again, I still think there's definitely a place to be said for this in terms of just jumping right into some bullpen work. One thing I forgot to mention up here, but before we even get into the bullpens, this is like, when I say bullpen here, this is like full slope bullpen. So there's another potential step before that where it's going to be bullpen slope work. So slope work is you're going off the low or the middle part of that slope. And again, that's just another way that we can just gradually acclimate guys and their arms to getting off the full slope height. So again, for someone that's not been throwing that's only been down for throwing for 3 weeks or so, I'm probably just going to jump right into a bullpen. I'm not going to waste my time on slope work there. A guy come back from TJ, yeah, we're going to do some slope work here just to get them more comfortable with the mound. So slope work, and these are really, again, everything up until this point from 30, 45 down to here and up to that first bullpen for the most part, just fastball only. We're not spinning anything yet. So we have throw our first bullpen. That's fastballs. Now I'm going to start working in changeups on flat ground. I'm going to start working in changeups on flat ground so guys getting comfortable with it. Might start the long toss progression there as well. All right. So, build and pass, 150, 150 plus. Again, just want to be mindful of that in terms of how much we're long tossing. It's a conversation for another day. But then from there, we're going to go bullpen, fastball, changeup. So we're getting some changeups in on that bullpen as well. Once we do that, then we're getting all of our pitches as well. And again, once we throw that first bullpen, fastball, changeup, then we're going to start working all our pitches on flat ground. So really, we want to work any pitch that we're going to introduce on a bullpen. We want to make sure we can get it, that guys are used to it on flat ground, just from really just going through their mechanics and motion more than anything. Throw our bullpen with all pitches. That might be a 30, 35 pitch bullpen looking like that. Then we get a live BP or a sim game. So we're facing some hitters, or maybe simulated innings or whatnot. Really, the goal for all of this is a gradual progression in intensity more than anything. Some people say, well, why don't we just jump right into a sim game or whatnot? Well, anytime, if we go right from flat grounds to right to live BPs, well, our intensity is going to be, that intensity might be like here for flat grounds, and then you jump right to that, it's going to be just boom, right up right away. We want it to be more a matter of, hey, you have a gradual intensity for your bullpens up to your live BP, so it's gradual like that. It's not just a huge spike right away. Anytime you have that big spike in intensity, volume, or anything like that, that's typically where things tend to go wrong and re-injuries start to happen. So live BP sim game, and then eventually getting into games. So again, this is a very general overview of throwing program design of how we, essentially every pitcher we work with at our clinic here, how I take them through it. Again, there's a lot of other intricacies that go into it, but this is generally what that looks like. So again, if you're a pitcher, you're dealing with an arm injury, you're on the horizon of getting back to throwing and whatnot, and you just don't feel comfortable in either the material you've been given or how you've been told to get back into throwing or whatnot, go ahead and leave some questions below down in the comments section. Like and subscribe to our page. We have a lot of baseball content daily or weekly, specifically for baseball players and pitchers. Or check out some of our free ebooks below.